So the couple relationship is the most demanding relationship we'll ever enter into. The progression that's happened in the last 67 years is really putting a demand on all of us. And I don't think our knowledge of couples has kept pace with it. Among other therapists, I'm a psychologist specializing in couples. I even heard at this conference, people don't like to do couples therapy because all the quadrants hit you at once as it emerges in a fury, uncontrolled regressions. And this is some of the territory I want to begin to map out for your own thought and whatnot. So if I can rewrite the marital vows, this is what I would write. Will you take the temper tantrums, the sensitivities, the overreactions, the insecurities, the character defects, the control issues, the unrealistic expectations is one of the areas we're going to focus on, the unresolved family issues, and the uncontrolled regressions in the lower right quadrant, for better or for worse. At least I got one part of it correct. So if I was to say in the couple relationship, the success of the relationship is contingent upon all of these elements arriving, the developmental history that you were raised in, what your parents role modeled, the personal growth that you have achieved. The person with the highest level of growth sets a ceiling on how far the relationship can go, because by definition, it takes two. The person with the lowest ceiling sets it. It's also contingent upon maintaining the visceral reaction. Gottman showed that when a couple's fighting, they're barely breathing. It's almost like they're in a post-traumatic stress disorder. And controlling that visceral reaction, whether it's under conflict or even, very importantly, when things are going well, holding intimacy and not looking away is vital in terms of reaching the higher stages of couple development that I'm going to tell you about today. So that's happening also in the lower left. We're going to talk about the couples line, the important role of the pre-trans fallacy in it. The cultural messages that we're getting today in terms of love being a constant. Love's not a constant. Commitment's the constant. Being able to sustain and hold love as we get up to the developmental stage becomes a factor dependent upon our own growth and what we have achieved with our partner. We all have to live with the ability to imagine love greater than we're going to achieve. And it's really important. I'm sorry.
I'm just translating for the Hungarians, if you don't mind.
Okay. It's really important that we don't allow our idealization of love to contaminate what we're able to achieve in order to make progress on this developmental line. And then finally, I just want to say a little bit on regression. I don't have enough time today to talk about regression, but if you want to read about it, it's in the last issue of the Journal of Integral Theory and Practice. Regression, when you get involved with somebody at an intimate level, you're involved with their 2-year-old, their 3-year-old, their 4-year-old self. What's the most dangerous thing police officers walk into? Domestic violence. Because in effect, you can get a 220-pound guy functioning at the level of a 4-year-old. He can't be told to go to his room. And if an unsympathetic authority figure shows up in the form of a father figure, and it aligns with developmental injury in his history, we're going to have a dangerous situation. And that's what's happened, is the regression is central to maintaining the upper stages of couple development. So I think I did, and we see in the lower right, this is always under-articulated in integral circles because we don't know what to do in terms of praxis. So here's one of the clinical observations I made that led to development 10 years ago when I began to read integral. This came together to me in the form of this question. And I was wondering, working with couples, why is it that a couple can do 85% correct in their relationship, and it's the 15% that they do wrong that becomes a substantial part of their state experience of the relationship? You see that? It's amazing how we do that. It's how we live in relationship to the ideal. So here's the couple's line of development that we're going to fit everything we said into in a moment ago. It goes this way up the continuum, and I'm working with Terry O'Fallon, and I matched up, and this is individual development according to O'Fallon. And I kind of lined it up a lot like Wilbur did in integral psychology to try to get a feel for this. And what are the developmental challenges unique to the couple that contributes to this? So like any line of development, no stages are skipped. You can rise up, but once you're there, you can drop in. But if another person is there with you, they can't go there with you. I've already said that if you have somebody functioning at this level, the diplomat level, and their spouse is at this level, Terry says that it predicts divorce, and that's a research question we're perhaps going to look at later on. But they set a ceiling so that they're not going to get above the role level. Until 1964, there was, in the mid-60s, like in the advent of green on spiral level, there was nothing beyond roles. It's only recently that we've become to a relational level where we're going to form partnerships. Everything used to be roles. And it's because of this new advent that we've had no models of what's next, which was the title of a conference in Denver once. So let's keep going. So here we are right here, safety and attraction. This is falling in love. It's a wonderful experience. We are so consumed with the energy and the feelings. It's all about projective identification and bodily sensations. And we hope, above all hopes, that it's not going to end. And if you really think that, you haven't been single long enough. Because what happens in time is, before I say that, romantic movies always stop at this stage.
Yeah.
They don't know where to go. It's kind of why guys don't like to go to chick flicks. You don't like us when we get out of the movie theater. So nobody knows where to go. So what ends the wonderful safety and attraction stage is reality. But at the heart of this, and notice this is in red, so watch as I flick through this. The pre-transcendent fallacy is here. And do you remember what Wilbur described the pre-transcendent fallacy is? It's the mistaken interpretation that a behavior, motive, or understanding originates from a higher stage of the development. It occurs when one confuses emotional enthusiasm fired by bodily sensations, his words, with the much more developed capacities of empathy and understanding. And boy, in couples do we need this structure. So, what ends the safety and attraction stage is reality. So what tree does Adam eat from in the biblical story? The tree of knowledge. Here's the knowledge. He farts. She has menstrual cramps. She's irritable. He's non-communicative. So the reality intrudes upon the dream and the projection, and then we're left into the role stage where we have to start making this thing work together. And there's two persistent fantasies that continue. Two persistent fantasies. The first one is the fear that I made a mistake, who I picked. And the second one is other people get to live here. They don't. They never do. This is part of the cultural milieu where we've all drank too deeply from. I don't want to be pessimistic because there are upper stages. Okay, another thing that happens is distorted interpretations at this stage. Because remember, we're operating out of our projection, not operating out of empathy and understanding yet. So I like these series of cartoons. It reflects the sensitivities, the distortion, what he heard. You're way too stupid to be trusted driving alone in bad weather. What she said, drive carefully, dear. And how often do we see that distortion on and on? What she heard, you don't expect me to take care of the kids, clean the house, and make dinner, do you? What he said, feeling any better, honey? So in the best relationships, the distortion rate is 50%. Everyone else approaches 100% distortion. The only way we can cope with that, part of the praxis in doing that is staying open. When you said this, when you didn't call me, it feels like I don't matter to you anymore. and I'm worried that something happened to you. See how I'm open? And they say, I'm sorry, hon, I'll call you, I can see that. Versus, you're a jerk, why would you call me? You're an idiot. You just don't care about anybody but yourself. So you're not staying open. The distortion is huge in intimacy because of everything we've said that is invested. Okay, so let's keep moving. So at the relational stage, if you begin to learn how to communicate, you can problem solve, you can calm down some of the visceral reactions and whatnot, and the relationship continues to work, you can shift roles, you're moving more into a partnership and traditional arrangements, you're doing well. If I can get most couples to this stage, I call it a day and I'm done. Because most couples operate the roles, and if they're lucky, they're at the relational stage. But the problem in this stage is the same two persistent fantasies. What are they? I married the wrong person, and other people get to live here at safety and attraction. Now, part of this problem is that constant lower left cultural messages. That's a paper, this paper on the couples line is already written. The next paper I'm going to write is going to be on this lower left cultural distortions. Because we've got to deconstruct some of these messages, or as Wilbur said yesterday, clean up some of these messages, because they're leading us in the wrong direction. So here we go. I want to show you some of the ideal. I love this one. My ideal woman knows what the infield fly rule is. That's in baseball, the infield fly rule. My ideal man knows what a credenza is and can lift it. And inevitably, they're left at this role stage, contemplating the difference between their idealization and the road they got to journey to get to a higher stage. And even furthermore, I love this one because it's indexed by sex. I'll tell you what, Millie, I'll start acting like the guys in your soaps when you start dressing like the girls in Victoria's Secret commercials. Men are easy to predict in this level of idealization. We're simple. But Warren Farrell cites in his book, there's 25,000 women in the United States that read 20 or more romance novels a month. If you read 2 a month, you are obsessed. That is feminine pornography, is that level of objectification of men, especially in the way that Harlequin romance, formulaic constructs that. That isn't where empathy and understanding is. That's the cultural distortion going on. So, we can't allow the ideal to contaminate contentment. We already talked about men and women's ideals, and we want to deconstruct or clean up some of these ideals so that we're not stuck on a horizon that we can't arrive at. And that's what we're doing in the lower left as we clean this thing up. Okay, so in first love, this is where it gets hopeful. Because when you let go of some of that lower left and you're more realistic, you're operating out of empathy and understanding, and you're combining your own ability to show up with love with someone else, which is the challenge to do, because so many things arise in that moment, both on a visceral and a shadow level, that it is a challenge. But the way I want to introduce you to first love, and I call it first love, because you're finally actually in love with the person, not your ideal. And so, and when we reach first love, this equation change. If the 85% of the state experience, it becomes closer to the 85% rather than the 15%. So here's what I want to say. Imagine if you were sick and you had this great neighbor. And what they did is they picked up the kids, they cooked a few meals, they vacuumed, they did a load of laundry. They even went to the drugstore and got you some medication. Wouldn't that be a great neighbor? But that's what our spouses do day in and day out. That's the abundance that we have to live in. And so in order to do that, what we do is we finally live with our partner. Our partner's the great neighbor. We can still drop into other fantasies, but notice that this pre-transcendent fallacy, the 2 fears, is finally out of there. We're not thinking about that anymore. No one else gets to live there. You got to go to the movies, enjoy them, but don't buy the message. So it becomes, the skills associated becomes, it's a conscious choice to love in the presence, just like our own practices, an individual, and staying positive. You have to have the ability to put aside previous hurts, because it's the previous hurts, those ruptures in connection Hendricks talked about, that when couples come together and they try to be intimate, they enter from the opening of a hurt, not from the joy. So it needs to be put aside and it needs to be compartmentalized in order to sustain that intimacy. It becomes a joint state experience. Remember in the upper right when I talked about the visceral reaction and being able to hold intimacy, not to look away, to be able to sustain it and feel the joy together? So it's the visceral reaction really surfaces at that point. So we're holding connection, we're prolonging those moments of joy. Maybe perhaps if you have children, there's moments when we realize people are there. In sex, we're capable of the three types of sex that Schmash talked about. This one's associated with safety and attraction, it's wonderful. Compassion and love comes online, and then finally we love from gratitude. These issues get resolved, and then I've never seen a couple at the spiritual level. It's a hard thing to do, because if you've done enough internal work where you're naked, as Thomas Habib said, in the presence of the divine, and you're not working on trying to feel comfortable with somebody on that, you're just showing up, and you're actually transparent with a partner. That takes a lot of courage to do that. So deficiencies are expected, explored, and integrated. Transparency and communing is easily accessed. Joint witnessing serves to open space greater than either could achieve alone. That's the beauty of it. Is that resonance going back and forth. Intuition and other subtle energies heighten presence during peak experience of love, and as Whitehead said, there's the ongoing creative advance into novelty. Doesn't that feel wonderful? But it's hard to do.
Can I buy that?
It's hard to do. So you can see why I'm excited about a couple's line. We need a direction to go. We have to understand the rules of the road and how we're going to get there. I told you this paper is already being written. And the central role of this pre-transcendent fallacy. There's a black hole at the center of all of our intimacies that we need to culturally jettison. Currently, my wife here, Christine, and I are running a study. We're doing an emotional screw study to prove that this pre-transcendent fallacy is unconsciously operating in people. And if any of you know what a screw test is, you get an idea of what we're going to do on it. Or if you want to know more about it, I'll tell you later on. So thank you very much. It's wonderful to be able to present here.